Good evening. Welcome to In Our Community. I am your host, John Waller. I'm here with Charles Bedord, who is an expert at finding expert witnesses. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Nice to see you. So how did you get started helping businesses to find expert witnesses?
Well, it's kind of a long, convoluted story, actually. I went to graduate school, and I studied biochemistry. And then I worked in the pharmaceutical industry in research and development for more than 30 years. Later, I took retirement from Roche Pharmaceuticals, and I was looking for something else to do with my time. And I really didn't want to commute into an office or a laboratory anymore. So I was looking for something I could do perhaps remotely, preferably from home, actually. And I happened to go on to a job search site. It was called Virtual Vocations. And they specialize in listing jobs that you can do from work at home status. And I found an ad for a company named Reuben Anders, who is located in Boston. And they're looking for a remote person to search for expert witnesses in case of legal litigation. Well, it was kind of interesting to me because in the pharmaceutical industry, I served on a lot of project teams. And these are very multidisciplinary teams, and they always included a patent attorney. And so I got to know quite a few patent attorneys. I was kind of interested in the patent cases that affected new drug development. And so when this opportunity came along with Reuben Anders, I thought, well, maybe I should look into this because I have a background in the life sciences, medicine, biochemistry. Maybe I'd be a fit for this. And it just so happened that Reuben Anders was looking for someone at that time to primarily address patent litigation cases. So I applied for the position, went through some interviews, and they hired me on a work-at-home status. So Reuben Anders is back in Boston, and I'm out here in the Silicon Valley.
Did you have to travel back there for any training with him?
No. The training was done on the telephone, essentially, and it was pretty much on-the-job training as far as this is what, this is the process we go through, this is how you do it. Before I got hired, I had to do a sample case.
Tell me about that.
Well, they gave you a sample case, for instance. We would like you to find a person who could possibly serve as an expert in for this type of a case. And you have 4 hours to do it.
Oh, cool.
And these are the qualifications that we're looking for. And I want you to go ahead and find this person and do a brief write-up of this person. What their qualifications are, etc. Well, so that was the process I went through. Now, I did not actually have to interview the person. I just had to find someone and write them up, based on what I found on the internet.
Cool, so the clock's ticking, right?
Yeah, and the clock was ticking, yes.
240 minutes.
4-hour time limit.
So how did you do?
I did it in about 3 hours.
Really?
And it was a kind of a fun process. I really enjoyed it. I went to academia and I looked at some people in universities because I was very familiar with the university structure and the various departments in universities and so on. And they were happy with the results. So
what kind of a person were they looking for?
I don't recall. This was about 5.5 years ago now.
Cool. That
I did this. So I don't recall exactly what the model case involved.
Cool. So I hope our audience stays tuned until the end of our show because you've got something really cool that you're going to share with them. You shared with me yesterday.
Okay.
So kind of a teaser. All right. So how many people are there that report to Reuben Anders as far as doing the same thing you do?
Well, as far as searching for expert witnesses, in the division I'm in at least, there's about eight or nine of us. 8 or 9. And the majority of these people happen to be located on the East Coast or in the immediate Boston area. I'm the only person out here in Silicon Valley. I think they were kind of interested in me because, like I mentioned, originally the job was to focus on patents originally. Mm-hmm. And being out here in the Silicon Valley, I was in the heart of a lot of technology and patent applications and so on.
So how do they contact you? Is it like Mission Impossible where Tom Cruise, like you're sitting at home and you get this cassette and it self-destructs in 50 seconds
Not
after
quite,
you get it?
not quite.
How does it work?
But what it is, as you know, there's a 3-hour time difference between us and Boston. So I get up in the morning and I come downstairs and log onto my computer. And I go into the Ruben Anders website. If there's a case for me, it'll be located, it'll be in their website with my name on it.
You don't get an email from them. You have to go dig into their website.
Well, yes, I log onto their website, and I've got a location. I'm actually in their website, and they send me a email through Outlook on their website.
Okay.
And they say, we have a new case for you, and it involves this. Do you have time to take it? So then I have a choice. I can accept the case, or I can say, no, I don't have time to take it. It's my decision whether I want to take the case or not. In most cases, I do, because they're pretty fascinating things. And
tell me about that. When you say fascinating, what does that mean?
Oh, I thoroughly enjoy the work. I really do. One thing I didn't care about patents cases was that they all involve patents. And what I do now is that I work in cases across the board. They involve a whole wide, broad spectrum of different disciplines and areas. And I enjoy that. I enjoy the variety. And that's why, I don't know if I could call them fascinating, but they're enjoyable to work on.
What's the most fascinating or the most enjoyable or the coolest one you've worked on that the audience would like really get a charge out of hearing about?
Oh, about a charge. Well, that's kind of, that's a little bit hard to say, but I get about 2 cases a week.
Okay.
Generally. There's one case here. I just brought in an example. I wrote a letter to a potential expert on this, and this involves homeopathic medicine. And I'm going to read this verbatim, so I hope our audience bears with me here.
They're taking notes. It's okay.
Okay. Here's an example of a letter I'd write to a potential expert. And this was a particularly interesting case. I am writing to inquire about your interest in a legal matter concerning homeopathic flu remedies. Homeopathy follows the law of infinitesimals, which involves creating a highly diluted solution of a purported active ingredient. In this case, the active ingredients were duck hearts and duck livers, which had been incubated for 40 days. We're looking for an expert in chemistry, biochemistry who can testify on the methods used to manufacture this product that allegedly results in nothing but water remaining in the final product. An ability to discuss this issue in terms of Avogadro's limit is required. In homeopathy, Avogadro's limit is a point at which no molecules of substance exist in dilution.
Pray tell, did you find this expert?
Yes.
Were they at Starbucks? Where'd you find them?
No. What I did, in this particular case, I wound up going onto Google.
Okay.
And I used Google Advanced Search. And I don't know if our audience is familiar with this, but you can go onto your just general Google page and type in Advanced Search. And it takes you into another page. And on the second page, you get all types of criteria you can search for: keywords, key phrases. You can search for include these words, or must include this phrase exactly, this exact phrase in quotes, and so on. So I searched for probably about 3 days for a candidate for this. But I actually identified 3 people, interviewed all 3, and selected one.
Why'd you select that one?
Because they had the most practical experience as far as actually manufacturing homeopathic products. The other people had what you might kind of a theoretical understanding of what homeopathic medicine did, what the treatments consisted of, but they had never really manufactured the products or, let's say, administered them to the patient. Their experience is all theoretical rather than hands-on.
How much would this expert get paid?
Well, experts get paid. It really varies on the type of expert you're looking for. A typical range for an expert witness is, say, typically they break their costs up into 2 portions. One portion for research and preparation, another portion for deposition and testimony. A typical range for research and deposition is typically around $250 to $300 an hour. For deposition and testimony, a typical range would be maybe $300 to about $700 per hour.
And this is, and keep in mind that this, for the audience, that this is for court cases.
Yes, this is for actual court cases. And it also differs on the type of expert you're looking for. If you're looking, prices can go quite high. For instance, if you're looking for people in certain medical specialties.
Like?
Oh, let's say a neurological surgeon, or a person who has experience, let's say, in treating a particular type of heart defect. Or, for instance, I'm sure our audience I'll mention this because it's been all over the television and so on. Recently there have been some cases involving vaginal mesh implants. And so if you're looking for a specialist in this, these types of services can go upwards of $1,000 an hour.
Wow. So have you ever heard about an outcome of a case that you worked on, so it goes basically, Ruben Anders will get you onto their website telling you they need an expert. That's the timeline as you go on there and you accept the work and then you find them the expert. So have you ever heard how it went from the beginning to the end?
How the case was settled?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, what the process I go through is that when typically I identify two experts for a case. One, what I call the primary expert. The second will be a backup or secondary expert. And what I do is that then I go ahead and interview. I either set up a phone call with these experts, and I interview them on the telephone. During the interview typically lasts a short interview, 10 minutes, a typical interview closer to 20 minutes. And while I interview the candidate, I've got specific questions that I ask them. And I jot down notes to myself while they're talking. At the end of our conversation, I ask if they're interested, if this really fits their background, and are they interested in going to the next step. If they're interested in going to the next step, what I do is that I write up a brief summary of our interview, ask them for a complete copy of their CV or resume, and then I send these documents to our headquarters in Boston. They send it to the attorneys. And if the attorneys think this person is fit, the attorneys contact the person directly for a second round interview with them. I myself am not an attorney.
You don't play one on TV?
No, I don't even play. I couldn't play one on TV, believe me. So I have no legal training whatsoever. But what I do is select who I'm going to interview, do the summaries, and send out the material, based on my interview with them. And then the second round interview is with the attorneys and the witness. Or potential witness. And if that interview goes well, then the attorneys send a contract to the client. And then if the contract is approved, if the expert witness gets hired, I get notified of that. So I get notified every time one of my experts I submitted gets hired. But I have no further contact with the case after that as far as how the litigation was settled, anything like that.
So do you record the interview with them?
No.
Okay.
No, I do this off a speakerphone.
So there's no way because there might be different intonations and things that the attorneys might want to hear in the potential witness.
Actually,
no. It's
my job to pick some of that up.
Okay.
As far as whether I think this person would be a suitable expert witness. When we use an expert witness, they are a member of, let's say, what we call a litigation support team, which coaches a witness on how to act, what to testify, how to answer certain questions, et cetera, et cetera. Now, sometimes you can interview a person on the telephone and you can just get a gut feeling that this person wants to run the show. This is not a person, let's say, who you could really work with as a team member.
Okay.
And this to me raises a red flag.
Too much of a driver?
Yeah, pardon?
They're a driver personality.
Not so much of a driver, but very possessive about it, feeling that they are the expert and they don't need any assistance, any help, anything else. And that person, that's kind of a negative. It really is when you're working on a litigation team. So it's my job. One of the jobs I try to do is pick up on little innuendos, the way people speak, what they say, and so on, and then I make the final decision whether to write them up or not. In some cases, what I'll do is that I'll have some doubts in my mind, the way the person spoke or what they said, and I will call my supervisor in Boston, and I'll say, I interviewed this person. They have some wonderful qualifications, but I just have these doubts about them.
So you, from your experience, maybe raises some little red flags, so you wouldn't have to go and record it then?
No, there's no recording involved.
Okay. Do you get any kind of a bonus when your witness gets chosen?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool. So thinking back to the archives, we talked about that yesterday, some of the most interesting cases. Can you share a couple or three of those?
Well, actually, I jotted some down here.
Perfect.
Just real quickly.
That makes you an expert witness on picking an expert witness.
Some I just jotted down. Like I said, I've been doing this for about 5.5 years, and I get about 2 cases a week, roughly. And so here are just a few examples.
So that's 5.5 years. Let's just do the math on that. So that's 100. That's like 500 and 550 roughly.
Well, I started out much slower than that when I first joined, but now it's increased dramatically. So
that's a lot.
I doubt if I have 500, but I mean it now runs maybe about 2 cases a week that I get.
Okay.
And so, for instance, we get a lot of class action suits.
Like?
An example of a class action, for instance, would be we had a case involving claims made by a particular brand of green tea that the tea would produce weight loss in people. So I needed a person, who was experienced, let's say, in herbal preparations, herbal medicines, or what we call, health foods, and also knew how would you measure weight loss? How would you determine this? Mm-hmm. And how would in a scientific manner, how could you prove this? And then, in this case, we were arguing for the plaintiffs who said, no, this particular type of tea did not produce weight loss. So that's an example of a class action.
And you found this expert?
Oh, yes.
How did you find them? That's so interesting. I mean, how did you, were you like Mr. CSI or Mr. MacGyver? How did you find that kind of green tea expert witness?
Well, again, first of all, Reuben Anders maintains its own database of witnesses, and it has probably 2,000 to 3,000 people in there.
Are they by category?
They're not by category, but you can search the database by keywords. So you can put in tea, or you can put in a phrase, green tea, and so on. And you might get some hits there. You might get, let's say 15, 16 hits. And this is a database of resumes.
Okay.
A database of resumes. It's not just name, but these are people who've been contacted in the past or served as experts for Reuben Anders. So I search that database first. If that doesn't work out, then I go to Google and I do advanced search. And I'll put in, give me a search for sites that contain these words like, quote, green tea, weight loss. Let's say I want a professor at a university who's an expert in this. And I'll go ahead and type in the word professor. Then I might say department, because often these people are in department of biochemistry or department of health sciences, something like this. So you see what turns up on Google. Okay. And you usually do this, or you reiterate this process several times over a period of a couple days. Generally, we like to identify and interview at least one witness for a case within 4 days of getting the case. If you're lucky, you can do it in 1 day. If you're very lucky. Most times you require about 3 days until you find one and actually get the interview done. You identify the person, contact them, and the contact process takes a while. For instance, if it's not in the Reuben Andrews database, for those people, we already have their emails. If they're not in there, if we identify them off Google, then what the next step, let's say what I'll do is, let's say Professor so-and-so at a university said this, an article on Google. Therefore, then the next step would be to go into Google and type in, let's say, doctor, by name, and see what turns up. And oftentimes it'll send you to a university website, and where the name is listed. These professors list their names on their own special pages at the university websites. So you can find it that way.
So once you found Professor so-and-so, does he get thrown into the Reuben Andrews database?
Only if I write them up and submit them as a candidate.
Okay.
Otherwise, no, they do not enter the database.
Have candidates been used more than one time as an expert witness?
Absolutely, yes. For different cases, yes. Similar cases. For instance, we've had class actions about faulty roofing involved in installed on apartments and houses. And, we have people who are very good at roofing issues. We have other candidates who are very good at advertising, misleading advertising.
Right.
And so on. Yeah, yes, we definitely use candidates more than once.
So getting back to Mr. Green Tea here, so. Okay,
so that's one example. Another case we had involved oysters that were harvested off the coast of China in what they called Chinese waters. And the oysters are found to contain relatively high levels of lead. So the question came up, were these high levels of lead, were this naturally occurring levels, or was it due to pollution? And also, what constitutes Chinese coastal waters?
Right.
So that was another type of case.
So does that go out to 12 miles as in the old days of international waters?
I don't recall, but we found the expert.
Where did you find him? Was he in China or?
Let's see, if I recall right, no. But what we did, we found an importer of oysters that had been harvested in China, a person who imports them into the United States, who knew about this issue.
Awesome.
Then we have another case of who is responsible for the release of toxic materials when a U.S.-owned tanker ship blew up in Brazilian waters. And here they were looking for an expert in Brazilian environmental law.
And did you find them?
Yes, I did. I made multiple phone calls to Brazil.
Can you be more specific? What's multiple phone calls to Brazil?
Oh, probably. What I did was, again, we didn't have anybody in our database, so I went into Google, and I typed in Brazilian environmental law. And there are numerous law firms in Brazil that specialize in environmental law.
Wow.
So I found someone there who spoke. I called these firms and identified someone who spoke English.
Good. And
arranged some. I interviewed them by the phone and wrote them up.
Do you ever use Skype?
No, I don't. No, okay. I do not. I do not do that. No.
Okay.
Another one is an expert on the manufacture of playing cards used in gambling casinos. In this case, we were looking for someone who knew about the processes, the actual manufacturing process used for these cards, and how the manufacturing process ensures that the cards are not altered for purposes of cheating, and also how state gaming commissions ensure that the cards are not altered.
I was just going to ask you, was that person involved with the Nevada Gaming Association?
Yes. Okay. That was difficult to guess, right?
Yeah, had to be rocket scientists to figure that one out.
Actually, I think I found 3 experts. 2 of them were in Nevada, another one was in New Jersey.
There you go.
Then we had a case here involving chicken farmers outside of the U.S. And this was a case where a large commercial poultry farmer bought a batch of vaccine to vaccinate his chickens against a virus that invades the chickens and causes sickness and death. And he vaccinated his chickens, and the chickens got sick anyway. So the question came up with, was the vaccine actually defective? Or was it manufactured properly but stored incorrectly, or was it administered improperly? So I needed an expert in poultry viruses, and particularly chicken.
How did you find
viruses? Again, in this case, I had to search on the internet and find an appropriate person. And finally, last area of cases that we get quite often are medical malpractice cases. And these cases often involve these involve a lot of surgical practices, specialized types of surgery that went poor or had a poor outcome. And now a lawsuit is being brought against a physician. And physicians can be somewhat challenging to locate for two reasons. Number one, many physicians do not post their own private emails. So if you go into universities, however, you can go into, let's say, university. I'll use an example: University of Colorado Medical School, and you click under faculty, and they'll have their faculty listed there. About 50% of these faculty members will have their email posted.
Wow.
So you can get their email by that method. Also, physicians, sometimes it's difficult to find one physician who's willing to testify against another physician.
The fraternity, yeah.
Yeah, and this is especially in cases where, in geographic areas where you have small numbers of populations, small numbers of people, because the people know each other.
It's a small village, right?
Yeah, it's a small village. So sometimes you have to go, if a case, let's say, is being heard in the state of Utah, you might have to identify, it's better to perhaps to look for your candidates from the state of New York.
Exactly.
Someplace like this where there's not
a
so
bigger
likely.
Pond, right.
And then another particular thing that can disqualify an expert witness, and this is always the first question I ask, is in my interview, is that you look for any conflicts of interest.
Awesome. Chuck, you're just a wealth of expert witness information. Thanks so much for being my guest tonight.
Okay, well, thank you.
Really appreciate it. It was extremely intriguing and just gets the mind going. Folks, thanks for tuning in tonight to In Our Community, and we hope you enjoyed our show and you learned something about the next time you need an expert witness, come seek out Chuck as your expert witness finder. Thank you.
Thank you.